On the 8th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree. Well, my friend, welcome to the 8th day of the 12 days of Christmas. We're glad you're here, and we hope that you enjoy this little event that we put together for you, and hope you're following as we go along for all of the 12 days of Christmas. If you missed the first few days, they're on Facebook right here on my profile, but you can also find them on some other pages, and people are sharing them, and we have more people join us every evening. And hopefully, by the end of the 12 days of Christmas, we will have gone viral. I doubt that. I think the song at the beginning and at the end pretty much prohibits anybody that just doesn't want to put up with Dave Lucas. And I do want to apologize because I'm not the vocalist. Let me tell you, I went to Kentucky Christian and joined choir I think it was my freshman year. And the first semester, I got a B in choir. The second semester, I got a C. And then the choir director said, don't come back. So I didn't go back. But I had a lot of friends that were in choir, and they traveled in the Christmas concerts, and they had a wonderful time. And I just usually went along for the ride. I didn't sing in the choral group at all. So I don't want you to hold that against me at the beginning or the end of this, but I somehow had to figure out how to make a proper introduction for you, and so that's what we did. The 12 days of Christmas, we're looking at each individual gift in a way in which I'm sure you've never looked at it before. How do I know that? Well, because I have spent literally hours upon hours on every one of these gifts, going back over, looking at them, reviewing literature, going all the way back to the Old English and to some French documents, which is a little hard because I don't speak French well and I read French less than speak it. So it's been fun, but I mean, thank God for modern technology, and I can translate documents and look at it and carefully look at it. 8 maids a milking. And notice once again, we're back to a prefixing again. Probably you're going to get tired of hearing that. But I didn't think about that before I started doing the study on this song, that lots of these parts of this song have that a prefixing going on, and tonight is no exception. 8 maids a milking. And I've got some good news and some bad news for you. The bad news, there's still 4 of these stanzas after tonight that you have to watch and endure my singing. That's why I want you to sing along as soon as you kick on in the beginning, if I'm singing, or as we close in the end, you sing out loud, okay? Your whole family, get them together and sing so that you don't have to put up with me. But there are no more birds. That's the good news. The birds are all finished. So you don't have to try to figure out about birds and eggs and so forth. But it's been fun, I think, looking at those birds, and especially if golden rings are pheasants, then that was a whole lot of birds. One could say this song is for the birds. Sorry. Okay, so let's think about milkmaids now. This is a common practice in Europe for a long, long time. Sweden, England, France, the Netherlands, Holland. Yeah, pretty much all the same, but never really took off here in the United States. I'm not sure why. I think because we had more of an individualistic pioneer spirit, and so when you went out to homestead, why the woman included this in almost all of her chores. Later, the sons would go milk, and sometimes the daughters, but back in Europe, this was a common practice for young ladies to take on the job of being a milkmaid. This was before refrigeration, so think about that. This was before we had a lot of refrigeration, and Drinking milk was a luxury. It was quite a luxury for high elite people because milk quickly spoils. You know that. If it's set out at room temperature or above for very long, it goes bad. Or blinky, as my mom used to say. That milk's blinky. I used to milk a cow and bring it to the house and strain it and get all the impurities out of it, and then it would be rendered out into whatever we were going to make it, cream, separate the cream from the rest of the milk, or make cheese. And that's what these milkmaids did. They were important to the households because they did all of those chores. We're going to mention that they went through a litany of products that they produced for a family or the farmer, because some elite person, a farmer or landowner, would have several cows and then hire milkmaids, depending on how many he needed, to come and milk the cows. Now, they didn't all have barns like we do today. I have friends that have dairy. I've got a good friend who has a dairy back in Indiana, and they every morning and every evening they milk the cows, but they have machines and they put them on and clean the, it's really a scientific process. But in these days, those milkmaids a lot of times would just go out in the field and catch up to the cows, and the cows got used to it, and it was part of the process. And then they would bring that milk back to some milk room or some refrigerated room. It would be cold, cool, and they would render it out into the various products. They always made cheese, custards, bread pudding, curds and whey. Remember, there's another rhyme that talks about eating her curds and whey. All that's a product of these milkmaids, so that it wouldn't spoil. Cheese keeps a lot longer, and butter keeps a lot longer. You have to kind of keep it cool, but it won't go tainted or rancid if you're able to keep it cool. Excuse me. And by mentioning maids, these were unmarried women. So the song has a little bit of romance in it. This is kind of inclined to the romantic side of the area. And in the 15th and 16th century in England, the phrase "let's go a-milking" was a euphemism to let's get married. I never knew that. I can imagine what some of you men, if you said to your wife, let's go a-milking, she probably would have just slapped you. A dairymaid in the 17th century would have the responsibility then for up to 20 cows. Imagine that. And would be helped in the milking sometimes by another servant, just to make sure that the household servant would meet up with the milkmaid and make sure she did a good job. A farmer that needed 8 milkmaids, like in the song here, would have to own a herd of about 160 cattle or so. And that wouldn't be out of the question. You could have that many milk cows, especially if you were well-to-do land baron like they were. So these maids would bring the milk back to the cheese house or to the dairy processing house, whatever little building they had. And they would do butter, cheese, curds, custards, and make them all together out of that milk. And so this became quite an occupation for a lot of unmarried women. Now, these unmarried milkmaids had great complexion, and they were sturdy looking, and they were healthy looking because naturally they ate a little bit of their product every day to stay healthy. And that was part of the side product of the job. You got to eat a little bit of the cheese or custard or whatever it is you made. And they also, this is interesting, these girls would sometimes get a disease called cowpox, which is a much lesser kind of disease rather than smallpox. Smallpox killed people, pockmarked their face, disfigured people, was a terrible disease. These girls predominantly got only what was called cowpox. And oddly enough, you didn't know this about milkmaids, maybe, the first smallpox vaccine came from a milkmaid, because milkmaids were proud of their vocation because they didn't get smallpox. And they finally, by observation, by the scientific process, figured out that if they scratched one of those pustules of the cowpox, which were never really as bad, usually not on the face at all, then they could inoculate children and other people and they didn't get smallpox. So the first vaccine for smallpox literally came from these milkmaids who seldom, if ever, got smallpox because they were around cows all the time. I think that's pretty fascinating. Now, there are a lot of these milkmaids that are pictured in art, and sometimes it's erotic, because these girls were looked at as being very desirable for men because they were unmarried and most of the time had healthy looking skin and seemed healthy. I mean, today we want, our culture likes to have women who barely have enough waist to put on their pants. Whereas in these days, these milkmaids were coveted because they looked healthy and they were a part of the culture at the time. So the French men and the English noblemen, they admired these milkmaids. And so to give a gift of a milkmaid was someone who was going to take care of this burdensome chore of making butter and cream and cheese and all those things for your household. And it was going to provide someone to come every day and to provide, say, products that you were going to need every day and going to want every day. Or you could sell, you could sell butter and so on. So it was pretty interesting. So to get 8 of these, that's pretty good value and a nice gift. So 8 maids of milking. Have you learned anything? I have learned a tremendous amount so far. We've got to 4 more. I want you to stay with us. Please share this. It's not because I think I'm a great vocalist, but because I think this is just a lot of fun. And during this COVID pandemic, this was a great way for us to exercise some free Christmas giving. And that's what I'm trying to do, is give to you a little bit of insight. You probably will never look at this song the same. 8 Maids of Milking, Day 8. I'm Dave Lucas, and I will see you tomorrow. On the 8th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.